Hey, what's up, everybody? Got a super exciting treat for you. Got an amazing colleague, friend of mine, to talk about creating OKRs, amazing pro tips with Dr. Mark Guadagnoli. Just a little history on Dr. Mark Guadagnoli. He's worked in industry and academia for over 3 decades. He has taught at several universities, including Harvard University, MIT, UCLA, USC. His media appearances include the New York Times, Times Magazine, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, the London Times, the History Channel, and CBS Sports. Dr. Mark Guadagnoli was one of the original faculty members of the Kirk Kerkorian School of Medicine here at UNLV and serves as a professor of neuroscience and neurology and the dean of faculty. Mark loves working to help people become significantly better, working with the best to help them become even better. In addition to his university work, Dr. Guadagnoli has an active consulting practice for over 20 years and has worked in the area of corporate optimization with companies like Zappos and Grammarly, where he developed their corporate university, developed and ran executive off suites, and worked on performance optimization with their executive team. Dr. Guadagnoli has worked with corporate optimization and executive development with companies such as DaVita Health Partners, Walker and Co., and research and consulting for Bose, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, Google, Panasonic, Procter and Gamble, and Sony. This work includes, for example, executive advising, coaching, core and culture development, and feedback assistance systems. Dr. Guadagnoli's primary line of research is related to something called the challenge point framework, which has been used to help athletes, corporate, executive, medical professionals, and others compete at high performance situations. His model of learning shows the appropriate short-term challenges result in long-term and stress-resistant learning. Dr. Guadagnoli has worked in performance optimization with athletes in several sports, including USA Olympic athletes for track and field coaches, and PGA and LPGA. His sport specialization is golf, where he's worked with PGA Tour winners, Ryder Cup members, NCAA Women's National Championship Team, NCAA Individual Champion, Canadian Men's National Championships, and World #1 Amateur. He's been invited to present his work across the world, including such countries as China, Canada, France, Germany, and Scotland. My good friend, colleague, mentor, Dr. Mark Guadagnoli.
The Academy is the project that's near and dear to my heart at the med school. And if you guys are interested, I'm happy to send you links to videos and Instagram and stuff like that. It's a new project that we're doing where this is our theme: improving lives through education, information, and cool stories. And the cool stories part's really important to us because a lot of times, when you're in academia, it's not about cool stories. It's about memorize this and memorize that. And that just doesn't really get it for us. So we're really trying to spread that word. So if you're interested, I'm happy to share that with you as well. Tyson, can you pop the next, please? Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about. Briefly, what is OKR? Again, several of you already know about OKRs, so when you have something to say, just jump in. Think about this much more like a conversation than it definitely is not a lecture. So how are they different than goal setting? I think that's a pretty cool question. The answer to that, where it's been used, how do we do it, so the mechanics of it, and then some of the nuances of it too, because there are a few things that those of you who have experienced it, you've probably already picked up, like, oh, that's different than I'm used to. So we'll talk about that as well. Tyson, you're doing a great job, by the way. Okay, what do Google, Intel, LinkedIn, Twitter, Airbnb, Bono, and Bill Gates have in common? Anybody?
I'm assuming they use OKRs.
They all use OKRs. And the reason that this is interesting to me is we're talking about, some major companies, right? Some of the biggest, most productive companies in the world. But we're also talking about some dudes, right? A couple of guys that are using this. And granted, they have some big things on their plate, but you don't have to be a company to use OKRs. Like I use them as an individual, and it's the same principle. Everything's the same. Are you communicating with 10,000 or 100,000 people, or are you communicating with yourself or your tribe? That's really the only question, but the methods really are the same. So the reason I say this is kind of think about this for you personally, and then how you can use it in the workplace. I think that's the better way to do it than think about it the workplace and then if you could use it yourself, right? Because if you think about it personally, how you can use it, then you own it, right? It's yours. And you just apply it in different places. And that's really, I think, the way to go about it. Tyson? Okay, so it's a goal-setting framework, right? OKR stands for Objective and Key Results. The objective is I think about this like, here's our North Star for this particular goal that we're doing. That's where we're going. And the key results are the stepping stones along the way to achieve that North Star, that ultimate goal. So it's just another framework, right? But it happens to be one that is really effective for a lot of, or just a couple of little nuanced pieces, but it's really effective. It used to organization to align teams around common objectives. And one of the things the reason it does this is because you share your OKRs with everybody. Like, again, if I'm thinking about this as an individual, and one of my OKRs is around fitness, I share that with people who can help me with my fitness goals. My family, if I have a coach, I'd share it with that person and so forth. And we're all in this together, and we can all support each other in that goal. And so really you're creating a community much more than you're just putting a goal down and trying to strive towards that goal. So OKRs are ambitious, and we're going to talk about that because it's a really, I think, a defining point of OKRs, and they're also measurable. So at the end of it, like if I say one of my fitness goals is to gain 5 pounds, right? My tribe knows that. And actually, let's say that I think I could gain 5 pounds over the next 6 months, 5 pounds muscle over the next 6 months. So maybe I'm going to say I want to gain 8 pounds over the next 6 months, because they need to be ambitious. And there's a really good reason for that in just a minute. Tyson, you guys, please stop me along the way if you get any questions about it. These first few we're going to go through pretty quickly. For a lot of people, it's a review, but then we're going to get into actually doing an OKR as well. So objective, the first one, again, like a North Star, concise, memorable, easily understood. So I'm going to use that 8 pounds of muscle. So instead of saying, I want to gain 8 pounds, well, that's concise and it's easily understood, but it's not particularly memorable. If I say, I want, in 6 months, I want to be shredded and 8 pounds heavier, all of muscle, right? That feels different than I just want to gain 8 pounds of muscle, right? And so the memorable piece becomes important. Now, there's a book on OKRs called Measure What Matters by a guy named John Dewar. And has anybody read that? You guys read it? Okay, it's actually kind of a cool book about how he got involved in it and so forth. But the thing he doesn't talk about, but we'll talk about, is this memorable piece. When you learn to do OKRs, they tell you to make them memorable. What they don't tell you is why you make them memorable. So I'm going to ask you, why do you think you make OKRs memorable? Or the objective, rather, memorable.
To attach a feeling of a goal.
The feeling that's exactly right. The feeling is important. So let me just drop down into the neuroscience side of this for just a second. If I have a feeling, I've elicited emotion. If I've elicited emotion, I've engaged the primal part of the brain, the limbic system, and specifically the amygdala. If I engage the limbic system, then what I've done is I've supercharged the learning of that particular area. And what that does is not only change the memory representation in my brain, but it also changes my entire physiology around that particular goal. So it changes the dopamine release that's associated with that goal. It changes the arousal level that's associated with that goal, and on and on and on, right? So there's this whole physiological cascade that happens when you can create these memorable phrases. And not just for me as the person who creates it, but the person I'm talking to as well. If I say, I want to gain 8 pounds of muscle, and I tell somebody in my tribe, they're like, cool, good luck with that. But if I say, I want to be shredded in 6 months and it be 8 pounds of rock hard muscle, now that feels different, right? And all of a sudden, you may be thinking, it's kind of cool. Maybe I want to do something like that, right? And so there's a whole physiology, a whole chemistry that's associated with this idea of memorable. So to me, like, I geek out on this stuff. That's super cool to me to think about it from that perspective. Okay. So the key results, right? They're fairly straightforward. They're specific. They're measurable. They're time bound. Some of you know about SMART goals. It's kind of standard types of things, right? It's the objective that really is the differentiator here to me. Okay, guys, thanks. So this was originally developed by a guy named Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel at the time. And this is way back in the 70s. It really caught on in right around the end of the 1990s and early 2000s, when this guy, John Doerr, that I was telling you about, brought it into some areas as well. So Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera. He's an investor in all of these companies. And one of the things that he said was, hey, I need you to do this system because this is going to work for you. And that's why Google, as an example, adopted it. And it's gone across almost all tech companies. So, like, Tyson had mentioned, one of the companies I've worked with now for almost 10 years is Grammarly. When they were a little bitty, maybe 47 employees, I think, and now they're a $13 billion company. And so OKRs are really important to them. We've done that since the very beginning with that company. So, and part of the reason why it's so hot in the tech industry, besides the fact that it started in the tech industry, is because it reiterates. So it gives you essentially like sprints. So a lot of you already know this language, right? Tech sprints. And it gives you these sprints to be able to, you put out this OKR, you share it with people, you reiterate, and you're just sprinting all the way through it. And that's what a lot of tech companies do. So, that's where it works. So Elias, you said that you had used OKRs before, right?
Yeah.
And was that your experience, the way that I had just described that?
Yeah, definitely. Like intensive goal setting, everybody sprinting in a quarter towards their goals and being measured by that, consistently, constantly.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the one thing that we're going to talk about next is the differentiator. And what if I just heard Elias say that, I would think, well, that seems like a lot of pressure, right? But there's a differentiator that just makes something a little bit different as well. Elias, you have something else?
Yeah, definitely. To add to that, I think what I really liked the memorable and feeling part, because it was a lot of pressure, right? It was super intensive. And I think that's part of why it's been tough to implement it in our companies, because it's hard to, it just feels like a shift from something that we dread and is like painful to something that we enjoy and we're thinking of every day.
So that's a great point, and it's one of the things where our formal education has failed us. And I'm not going to jump on this soapbox for very long, but I will say this. Our formal education is really based on a don't lose scenario versus try to win scenario. And so here's what I mean by this. If you're sitting in a class and the teacher asks you a question, you learn, whether you know this or not, you learn not to answer the question, even if you know the answer, because you may be wrong, right? Or you may stumble on your words, you may do something, and then you may be made fun of. But if we were in an education system and we were celebrated for trying, right? And I don't mean on a test. I mean celebrated for trying during the practice time, which I consider most of education. And they're like, oh, that's so cool that you tried that answer. That's not right, but here's where I can see where you're going. All of a sudden now it's a completely different. It's a let's try to win situation, not a try to protect from losing situation. Okay. And here's why I say this as far as the goals are concerned. One of the things about OKRs that's critical is your objective. If you reach your objective, you have failed. And I'm going to say this again in a couple of different ways. If you reach your objective, you failed. And the reason that you failed is because your objective was too easy. You're not thinking big enough. Okay, so in that weight gain situation, if I feel like I could gain 5 pounds, then that should not be my objective. I got to tell you this story. I was teaching class one day years ago, and this big dude, like muscled up dude, is in the back of the classroom, and we're doing goal setting one day. And he said, and so we're sharing what our goals were, and I asked him, hey, what's your goal? And he says, I want to be able to bench press 325. I said, wow, that's really good. What do you bench press now? And he said, 325. And I'm like, that's not a goal. And he said, yeah, I just always want to reach my goals. I'm like, that's not a goal. That's a reality for right now, right? But he said he reached 100% of his goals, right? That would be horrible to reach 100% of your goals. That means you just haven't said anything out there at all, right? And so OKRs really push the envelope on that, because if you've reached like 70% of your goal, then that's okay, right? It's not like, so, okay, if I say, I'll just make this number easy. If I think I could do 5 pounds and I do 8, and I say 8 pounds and I get to 6, that's a win for me, right? Whereas most of the time, and this is where we go back to the school piece, most of the time they're like, no, you said you were going to get to 8. So instead of celebrating the 6, they criticize the 2, right? Does that make sense? So we've got a whole feedback system that I use called Good, Better, How that gets around this. We won't go into detail about it, but anyway, it really talks about the idea of let's celebrate how far we've come and figure out how we get to the next stage. And I think OKRs do that better than just about any general method of goal attainment, right? Okay, I want to stop there just because I want to hear your reactions and what you're getting so far from what we're talking about. Anybody?
I'll hop in. I really like just the mindset change of celebrating the 6 rather than harping on the 2 that you didn't make. Goals being a bit not far-fetched maybe isn't the correct word, but like an actual goal doesn't mean you always get there, but I think that's right in line with where my mindset wants to be. You want to set realistic goals, and I think like sometimes they're too attainable where yes, you celebrate getting to that goal, but rather than keep pushing the boundary and celebrating how far you've got, and then keep pushing again to get to that goal and keep improving. I really like that mindset.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Who else?
It reminds me of this book called The Gap and the Gain.
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes we don't celebrate the gain. We celebrate the gap, from the 8 or from the 6 to the 8. We celebrate that gap that it didn't get achieved, but versus where we should be celebrating, or we get to celebrate the gain from the 5 to the 6 or whatever.
I agree with you. It's a great book, by the way. If you haven't read it, it's worth picking up. And yeah, it's exactly like that. I mean, and the thing is, we're not saying, okay, set a goal of, I'll use these 7 numbers, set a goal of 5, and if you get to 4, celebrate 4. No, you didn't set a goal that was a stretch goal. You guys know this phrase or this acronym BHAG? No? BHAG. Big, hairy, audacious goal. Okay, BHAGs. So you set these BHAGs and that are way out here, right? It makes you nervous to set these goals. Not ridiculous, but nervous to set these goals. And that's a cool place to be. And like, we talked about the memorable piece before. BHAGs that are slightly outside of your reach are the optimal way to motivate yourself towards something, because they change your arousal state. All of a sudden I'm nervous about this goal that I'm trying to achieve, and so I better get to it. I don't have time to waste. And it's really interesting. So I will mention the challenge point framework that Tyson had mentioned. Some of you know about flow or being in the zone or those kinds of things. Yeah? How many of you? Okay. So one of the things, there was a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who was the one who originated this idea of flow states. And this was in the 70s. And the challenge point framework, one of the things that it did was it looked at the science of optimized challenge and how you gain from optimized challenge. It turns out that, so flow state says basically, if your challenge is about equal to your ability, then you're likely to be in flow state. There's some other things involved too, but that's basically it. The challenge point framework actually modeled this specifically, and it turns out that if your challenge is a little bit less than 1% greater than your ability, then you'll be in a flow state. Then you'll be in an optimized challenge state. So if you look at these OKRs and you look at your goal, okay, I'm uncomfortable by saying I'm going to gain 8 pounds. So now I'm going to say I'm going to gain 9 pounds, right? And there it is. There's my optimal state, my optimal challenge. And it just changes everything about my psyche around that goal. It's like taking a wide lens and making it into a laser. And it does it from a very primitive, visceral way that you don't even really have to think about. So this is like OKRs it's a system, right? And there's nothing really sexy about a system. But when you start looking under the hood, there's some cool stuff in here because it changes your physiology, right? To start achieving these things. When you start sharing and getting excited about these BHAG goals that you have, all of a sudden now it's a very, very cool place to be. So anybody questions? Because we got one thing that we're going to do, and we're going to go into our BHAG goals right now. Kobe, anything?
I'll jump in with a quick question. I guess what do we look at on a daily basis to know that we're headed in the right direction? Like, a big goal, and it's I feel nervous about this goal, and I don't want to dread that. Like, I need looking at the spreadsheet that green red like measures my performance. So like, what can I look at on a daily basis that like gives me more motivation and excitement to?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And coincidentally, that's exactly where we're going next. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to join me with this, and we're going to put together first your objective, and that's all I want you to think about. And it's your objective for anything you want. My recommendation is to think about it in life, but you can think about it in business as well. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half to put together your objective statement in a way that is memorable, motivational, that's going to, get people excited, especially you, about it. Okay? Go. Okay, so let me hear from a few of you. What is your BHAG? What's your objective?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Pulcini. Hi, Dr. G.
Hi, Jen.
Um,
Good to
my
finally hear
object,
your voice.
oh, thank you. My objective is communication and meaning communication and team building.
Okay, so what can you do with that, knowing that it's communication and team building? What can you do with that to make it, uh, exciting, motivational, something that gets you going with the phrase?
When you're just saying that, my heart just starts beating and I get really nervous. I I don't even know the answer to that.
So this is one of the great things about OKRs is you are on a team. As soon as you start an OKR, you become on a team, and this is Team Jet, right? So all of us are there with you on the team. Can anybody help? Communication, right, becomes really important. Can you talk to us just a little bit about what that means for you, the whole objective?
For me,
Uh-huh.
um, well, it's just been a challenge in my past. I'm great at reading people, and picking up things, but actually articulating those words and communicating and building, um, I can find it challenging because
Communicating.
I either expect them to know what I'm talking about, and then there can be some frustration there, or asking for help. I just like, I don't even know where to start.
Okay. So does anybody have anything that's coming up that could be helpful in this objective, the phrasing of this objective? Kobe? For me, it's kind of a not good audio. Can you guys hear?
Your robot voice came back, Kobe.
She's going to swing
Okay.
around. Hold on. While, yeah. This video is sponsored by the Kerkorian School of Medicine, UNLV.
One thing that's
So-
coming to mind in reaction to Jen, what you're sharing, and the thing that's coming to mind is like Alex Shamosi talks about, like just doing a lot of push-ups. The push-up being like a simple, repeatable task, you know, to get to your goal. And I wonder if like, will it be helpful? Like, are meetings helpful to like work on that communication piece, like communicate your goals to people and ask for help, like and then is a meeting the push up, so then networking and meeting more people and stuff like that. I'm not sure if that is helping or going in the direction that Team Jen wants, but food for thought.
Thanks, Wes. Aaron, you and Kobe look a lot better, by the way, just side by side there.
Right? I feel the same way. And also just for the back end of the before we leave today, I want to find out who did your headshot, because that was a great headshot in the beginning. I meant to tell you. The one that Tyson found, I need to find somebody that says like one of those active ones.
Well, I'm going to say in regards to communication, I guess what comes to mind for me, because it can be so overwhelming, you're like, where do I even start? And just break it down to like, where are the areas do I feel like it's most beneficial, or where I struggle the most, and then break it down even farther and try to just be like, okay, if someone says or does this, then how should I respond or react? And then just work on like those smaller goals. Then it doesn't seem so overwhelming and scary.
So it's really interesting. What you just said, Kobe, is going to be exactly how we're going to go about our K and R, our key results, to be able to break it down. So, Jen, to me, you actually gave us a really big clue as to what your potential objective could be, because you said stating your objective made your heart flutter, right? Like actually thinking about it, saying, so your objective could be being able to communicate your objective in a clear and inspirational way, right? And then exactly what Kobe just said, what are the steps? What are the key results that you're going to be able to look at and say, okay, I can do this? So one may be to write out the statement, right? And the other may be to say it to yourself in the mirror. And the other one may be to say it to a small audience, say it to Tyson, and then say it on your next team call, right? These are key objectives. They're measurable. They're time bound. And if you say, I'm going to do this by this amount of time, etc. So I think, Kobe, these are the kinds of things that you're talking about, right? These little, what seem to be sub goals to this big objective that you're going to have, right? What do you think about that, Jen?
It gives me something to work on, with. So thank you. I'm
You're
taking
welcome.
notes.
Everybody, thank you for the input. See, this is the cool thing about it to me. One of the things that's cool about the OKRs is that it's a team, right? And I don't know that they're always taught this way, but at least I believe that this is how they should be done, right? Just because I think that you leverage the wisdom of the crowd, right? So anybody else want to share your OKR or your objective?
I had a quick question going back to what we were just talking about. So when you're along your journey to reach your objective and you're creating small goals along that journey, are you doing the same thing where your goals along the journey to your ultimate goal, which your ultimate goal is a little bit stretched, are those individual goals on the way to that? Is that stretched as well? And
Yeah, it's a great question, Hayden. So yeah, so if you think about yeah, every one of those goals along the way are going to make you, the key results along the way are going to make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And it could be uncomfortable because of the time frame, like I'm going to do this by Sunday, or it could be uncomfortable because of the actual task that you're doing, right? Or
Yeah.
some combination of those things. But it's a great question because when you sum the parts, they exceed the whole, right? And that's what you're trying to do. So I think it's a really great way to look at it. Anybody else have an objective you want to share? Go, Aaron.
Scaling our wholesale company to over 30 employees operating in over 15 states.
Okay, so I think that the content of that seems to me powerful, probably. And here's why I say probably. If it's in 14 states right now, what's the big deal, right? If it's in one state right now, right? So if you think about, I think I mean, you obviously know what that means relative to where you are now, but you're sharing it with the team. And what can you do to share it with the team? So if you said like increase, have a 3x increase in the number of states we represent, right? That it doesn't matter how many states you're in, that's a 3x increase, and so forth. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. Now, the other thing about that is, and I'm guessing this, Aaron, just because of our interactions that we've had so far, it's not good enough for you just to be in more states.
No.
You want to create a difference in those states, right? Mm-hmm. So now if you just change it slightly and say, I want to create a difference in 3 times as many states as I'm creating a difference now, that feels different to me, right? And it seems more aligned with who you are as a person.
Awesome. That's great. And it's funny because it is exactly 3 times. So it's spot on. Thank you.
You get lucky once in a while. So, okay. So, the objective is this BHAG, right? And the thing about it is, it's your BHAG. This is what's really important. It's your goal. It's your objective. It doesn't matter about other people. One of the things I loved about the 2 examples is they're very, very different examples. And yet they both work because they're yours. You own those. And then the key results are what are the stepping stones to get to that? What do I need, the building blocks to be able to get to that part? And I think Hayden's question is a great one, because if you can have a stretch goal as part of your key results, you're not just gaining more, but you're also learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And then once you get to that point, you actually start to thrive in that area of discomfort. And that's where you just take off. There you go.
I went with the big, hairy, audacious goal as a guide.
And it looks big, hairy, and audacious. The only thing would ask you to add is by when, right? Because that's going to add some serious spice to it.
By end of year.
So that adds some spice. There you go. Okay. So I left some worksheets with Tyson, and they actually They list out kind of some of the steps to do this. I got to tell you, the goals that you guys have come up with and the conversations that you've had around them, they're way better than the example that I gave in it. And so really just start with your own. Okay, Elias, before we're done, I got a question for you. Tell me 2 steps, 2 key results that need to happen for you to move towards that goal, that objective.
Yeah, I think the 2 are having the product down, the actual AI agent product down. That's the first one. And then the second one is doing like massive outreach to like tens of thousands of people. But then the cool thing about this, if the product is nailed down, which is an AI agent, then the AI agent can help facilitate that outreach.
Yeah, so then the major key result in that situation is the AI agent, right? So here's where it starts getting nuanced, and this is exciting to me, this part. So now you can use that key result as an objective, and then you have your key results to roll up into that one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you can you can fractionate this to the point that you know day by day, minute by minute if you want. I think that's a little obsessive, but at least day by day what you're going to do and what you need to accomplish. That rolls up into that major key result. And when you're talking about something that big, you need to have it nailed down, right? You can't waste time.
Yeah.
So I think that that's pretty cool. And if you get to 70% of that, you're still doing a great job. So, okay, I'm not going to take more time. I just, I appreciate you guys being with me on this. It's been fun being part of the team for a little bit. So thank you. Tyson, anything?
Oh, this was fantastic. I appreciate you breaking down the OKRs specifically around, goals versus OKRs. I'm going to drop the link to the worksheet that Dr. G sent over. I'll put that in the Slack right now. So you guys can access, or I'll put that in the chat right now. And then I'll send it to you guys via Slack also.
And then Tyson, I'll send you the links for Academy stuff. And Aaron, if you're actually interested, I've got 2 people who I think do great jobs with headshots. So Tyson's got my contact. Just reach out. I'm happy to give them to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I actually am. So thank you.
Very welcome. Have a great rest of the day, you guys. Let me know if I can be of help to you.
Thank you, Dr. G.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank
it
you
so
very
much.
much.
Take
Thank
care.
you.